and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
Welcome to Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. State politics taking centre stage today. We will be speaking to political analysts late in the show to help put into context what is happening in Kedah and Malacca and Johor. But first, in other news, Putrajaya has defended yesterday's raid by the Immigration Department targeting undocumented migrants. About 1,000 undocumented migrants were arrested by authorities in early morning raid yesterday in the areas surrounding the wholesale market in Selayang. Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said that such raid operations are normal and that the arrests were made in accordance with the law. But I think, Sharaad, the real issue here isn't about whether or not the arrests were lawful or whether or not the workers had valid papers. For me, the main question is really, what is the current priority of the government? Is it gaining the cooperation of the migrant worker community to help combat COVID-19, or is it about upholding immigration laws at the moment?
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems the senior minister was taking umbrage at the criticism coming from human rights advocates. But in fact, in Malaysia, it's been the public health advocates who have been very consistent in sort of framing the issue of undocumented workers and migrant workers at large for us and in terms of our response to COVID-19. So with them, it was very clear at this point in time, what was necessary is not to terrify anybody or any community into not wanting to cooperate with the authorities, whether it was the Tabligh group or whether it's the undocumented workers. Cooperation is necessary, especially for a community, if you can think of them as a community, that numbers in the millions.
Yes.
So what, Melissa, does this signal send out?
Yes.
Does it send mixed signals to the worker and undocumented community around the question of cooperation?
Yeah, I mean, you've rounded up 1,000 undocumented workers, but what does it say? What are the repercussions to the millions of other undocumented workers now driven underground for fear of being rounded up to check the validity of their papers?
Melissa, there's also this really interesting, I think, approach, and it distinguishes public health advocates from politicians. Public health, I think, advocates seem very pragmatic. They recognize that the virus doesn't see nationality, doesn't see,
does
documents.
not discriminate.
It doesn't discriminate. It just gets into the community and it's breaking the transmission. As you say, the chain of transmission, that's the most important thing. So that seems to be their approach. Whereas politicians perhaps are torn between other kinds of priorities, including playing to the gallery. And this time, the rising xenophobia promoted by some other politicians, promoted by some segments of the media, in order to find a scapegoat, maybe a whipping boy in these trying times.
Yes, an easy scapegoat, right? And the questions remain, I mean, just a pragmatic sense, Sharaad, where is the government going to put these thousands of undocumented workers that they've rounded up now? And, an option of sending them home is not really a feasible option at the moment. Borders are closed, so they have to remain in the country. So you're trying to contain everyone in one period. Can you observe social distancing? All that, I think, epidemiologists have pointed out.
Yeah,
right.
Melissa, also very quickly to note, also said that, at this point in time, the authorities are going to get much tougher on violations of the MCO, in terms of social distancing and compliance with SOPs. One of the punishments, it goes up to 6 months in jail. And do we really want to be putting people in jail at this point in time? And this question was raised when they had the special prisons or detention areas for violators. Again, this very kind of authoritarian default mode that we have in the government surfacing again in their approach. Is this the right way to actually proceed? All
right, speaking about things that are resurfacing, Human Resource Minister Datuk Sri M. Saravanan has advised Malaysians to change their mindset when it comes to jobs and to accept any work they can get. According to Saravanan, it is better to work in what the government has labelled the 3D jobs than to be unemployed. Now, the 3D stands for dirty, dangerous and difficult jobs. According to the minister, he claims that there are enough job opportunities. Malaysians just need to accept them. But the question remains, what has prevented Malaysians from taking these jobs before? It is the same old issue being raised once again, Sharaad.
Yeah, you know, we returned to an earlier discourse about the 3D jobs when there was discussions about how to shift things around when it comes to the foreign worker population. We don't really seem to have a coherent policy when it comes to foreign workers. Never mind the enforcement and, you know, the perhaps porous borders that we have and corruption within certain in ministries or authorities that allow for such influx coming in. But I think, Melissa, there's this other thing, right, which is that when we last talked about 3D jobs, the world was a very different place.
Sure.
Malaysia now suffering high levels of unemployment and the prospects of a global recession, coupled with the the needs for social distancing and affecting the retail and factories. All that.
I agree. It's a different
context.
I agree. It's a different time, Sharaad. But I'm curious to know what the minister means in terms of where these jobs are coming from. Shifting migrant labour out of which sectors? It would be also curious to know what kind of timeline he's thinking about. Perhaps we need him to further elaborate, because changes in labour market is not going to happen overnight, particularly not in the short term. So, wondering, particularly in these difficult times, how this is going to actually all pan out.
Yeah, I mean the minister's opened up a very important conversation, really, when it comes to be fair to him, he did say that employers have to take responsibility for providing incentives to get Malaysians to work for them, improving working conditions, improving wages, which have been actually the structural impediments to more Malaysians coming into certain sectors of the economy, right? So that is where we're back at, which is wage suppression, minimum wage, better deals for Malaysian workers that will incentivize them to return to or get into certain sectors. Also, maybe incentives that we need to think about in terms of encouraging enterprises to open their doors to local labour.
I think it's worth a longer conversation about the complexities of the labour market, particularly in this time. Unemployment up by 17.1% in March. It is now at a 34-year high. We spoke to Charles Santiago, MP of Klang, last week, and he mentioned that it's the 20 to 30-year-old age bracket. They are the ones, the largest group of those being laid off. So I think it's worth taking a closer look on that.
The minister, he did say, this is the time to put aside your plans and your dreams. Very painful statement there, I think, for any politician to make, saying we just have to be pragmatic. But, of course, let's see if the government has a real plan, on a granular level, a real plan to make this happen. All
right, we're going to take a quick break. After this, we'll take a closer look at the political instability at state levels. Stay tuned to consider this.
Isra, apa benda Rancak TV ni? Rancak TV ni adalah sebuah channel digital yang bernaung di bawah Astro AWANI. Apa yang best sangat dengan Rancak TV ni? Of course best, sebab dia ada macam-macam cerita. Dia ada cerita pasal isu-isu semasa, cerita pasal kesenian, cerita pasal hiburan, cerita pasal kecerdasan, cerita pasal sukan, cerita pasal travel, cerita pasal sejarah, fakta-fakta menarik. Dan mereka juga ada buat short film dan juga dokumentari. Dan yang paling penting, Rancak TV tak ada cerita pasal politik. Wah, menarik tu. Kena bayar ke nak tengok konten-konten Rancak TV ni? Tak payah bayar, satu sen tak keluar. Yang penting korang follow, like dan subscribe YouTube, Instagram, Facebook dan juga Twitter Rancak TV. InsyaAllah kehidupan anda akan menjadi lebih rancak selepas itu. Isra, apa benda Rancak TV ni? Rancak TV ni adalah sebuah channel digital yang bernaung di bawah Astro AWANI. Apa yang best sangat dengan Rancak TV ni? Of course best, sebab dia ada macam-macam cerita. Dia ada cerita pasal isu-isu semasa, cerita pasal kesenian, cerita pasal hiburan, cerita pasal...
Hello, if you've just joined us, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, with me, Sharaad Kuttan. Perikatan Nasional will take over the Kedah government after the majority of the state's assemblymen claimed to have lost confidence in Menteri Besar Mukris Mahathir. Jenari Adun from PAS, Muhammad Sanusi Muhammad Noor, has announced that 23 out of 36 assembly persons now back a new government. Kedah is the fourth state government to change since Tan Sri Mohd pulled Bersatu out of Pakatan Harapan in February. Now, joining us on the line to help us understand how political dynamics in Kedah reflects what's happening at a national level, we have Professor Dr. Muhammad Azizuddin Muhammad Sani, political analyst from Universiti Utara, Malaysia in Kedah. Good evening, welcome to the show. I'd like to begin with a question about timing. Now, why do you think that, what do you think led to the change in the state government now, especially as we understand there had been rumours, about this for a while now?
Yeah, I think it is because of the change of government in federal level. As we know that almost three states, Melaka, Johor, and also Perak, we saw the change of government, from Pakatan Harapan to Pakatan Nasional. So actually, the fourth state, which is Kedah, which is, I think, we predict already that it's going to be somehow, meaning that defection will happen, and also the change of government also will happen, Because,
can I ask you, it was recently, we had two aduns in Johor pointing to Kedah, saying that Kedah was a good model for Bersatu, that Bersatu had somehow maintained its strength when in negotiating with other parties in Kedah. Now, this changed. Now Kedah doesn't seem to be the great model for Bersatu anymore. What are the implications of this fall of Bersatu in Kedah going to be for Bersatu generally?
I think it's clear that within Bersatu we know there's a patient, Tun Mahathir's patient, also Tan Sri Mohd patient, and also it clearly can be seen happen as well in Kedah, where these two fighters keep fighting for power in Kedah. So then I think if rumors saying that several member of the assembly is going to defect, and I think it's become reality today when two from PKR. But clearly, even though we have yet to receive any announcement yet from four of the state assembly men and women saying that they're going to defect. Even though we got news from Malaysia Kini, I think, saying that two of them, saying that they're going to defect. So, but there's no official statement yet coming from them.
Azizuddin, is it surprising that the defections have come from PKR?
No, actually, those two PKR state assemblers, actually, both of them actually a supporter of Azmin faction, So meaning that when Azmin moved to Pakatan Nasional, so it's just timing for them to also defect from Pakatan Harapan. So then I think it's clearly today what happened. They already made their decision. So this, I think, led to the downfall of the Pakatan Harapan government in Kedah.
Okay. In terms of what is at stake, in Johor we saw that the tensions between UMNO and Bersatu were about positions, outstate GLCs, that these were the rewards of the political fight. But what is it in Kedah? Are they fighting over GLC positions? What is it that they want so much when it comes to holding power in Kedah?
Actually, I have yet to hear anything about that, position in terms of who gets what in Kedah. But somehow, I think if that's the trend, I think it's going to be happen as well in Kedah. As we know that the formation of new government actually not only consists of a member from PAS, but also from UMNO, from Bersatu, and also PKR. So, in order to strengthen the administration in Kedah as well, actually PAS as a bigger bloc in the Pakatan Nasional, most of the member state assemblymen, they have no experience in managing the state. They have no experience. Then I think they rely on several members from PKR, Bersatu, and also UMNO to run the state. So definitely, I think several of them will be given a certain position, not only in as a ESCO member, but also in the GLC. I think we will wait and see. I think, when it happens in the near future.
Right. Azizuddin, have you heard of anything regarding, the sentiment on the ground? Do we know of the mood on the ground? Will voters welcome this move?
Yes, I think when we see the tussle and also the change of government in the federal level, definitely we can see the sentiment also, among people in the grassroots level, because as we know, the previous, Pakatan government, they only have very slim majority. In fact, what happened after the generation in 2018, we have a hung state assembly until there's one defection from UMNO to Bersatu, which led to the majority of 2 seats, in Kedah. But now, seems that Perikatan Nasional, they have 23 seats in Kedah, so meaning that they have even bigger majority. So the sentiment actually can be felt on the ground, and whether they are support or not is also a big question, because another thing we need to consider as well the Tun Mahathir factor, because Tun Mahathir is very respectable, politician, also figure in Kedah, Some in the elder generation probably feel disappointed with the change of the government, but the younger don't care, as long as the new government can bring stability and also economic prosperity to the state. Yeah? So I think
can we talk about that in terms of both the management of the COVID crisis? I know Kedah has been or close to being a green state, and it seemed to be in the clear. Are people happy with the way the state administration has stepped in, whether it is with the public health response or with helping people, especially those in the B40, deal with the economic fallout from this crisis?
There's a concern actually on if you look on the rural area, places like Baling, Kuala Nerang, where people who are actually suffering from the MCO imposed in Kedah. But because of the current, in terms of infection is very low. Actually, there's no new infection now in Kedah, so people feel a bit ease in terms of their livelihood today. But the only thing is that the economy is very slow in Kedah. Slowly open up the economy. So I think probably the timing is good as well to have a change of government. So now the new government will really in charge on this matter, rather than the previous government. Yeah. So
okay, Azizuddin, we have just a couple minutes, half a minute left, and I just want to very quickly get your thoughts on this. Who is expected to be named the new Menteri Besar for Kedah?
I think what I heard is that PAS already proposed one name, which is Mohd Sanusi. Is the head of opposition in the.
Is there anyone else in the running?
So far, not yet. I think they are just waiting for the Sultan to respond to the name proposed. If Sultan asking for more names, so probably they will propose several names, including from probably UMNO, even Bersatu, But so far, I think what I heard is they are only proposing one name, which is Mohd Sanusi.
All right, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, Azizuddin. After this, we're going to take a look at what's happening with the state assemblies of Melaka and Johor. We'll be right back. Stay tuned to consider this.
Serap! Apa benda Rancak TV ni? Rancak TV ni adalah sebuah channel digital yang bernaung di bawah Astro AWANI. Apa yang best sangat dengan Rancak TV ni? Of course best. Sebab dia ada macam-macam cerita. Dia ada cerita pasal isu-isu semasa, cerita pasal kesenian, cerita pasal hiburan, cerita pasal kecerdasan, cerita pasal sukan, cerita pasal travel, cerita pasal sejarah, fakta-fakta menarik. Dan mereka juga ada buat short film dan juga dokumentari. Dan yang paling penting, Rancak TV tak ada cerita pasal politik. Wah, menarik tu. Kena bayar ke nak tengok konten-konten Rancak TV ni? Tak payah bayar, satu sen pun tak payah keluar. Yang penting korang follow, like dan subscribe YouTube, Instagram, Facebook dan juga Twitter Rancak TV. InsyaAllah kehidupan anda akan menjadi lebih rancak selepas itu. Serap! Apa benda Rancak TV ni? Rancak TV ni adalah sebuah channel digital yang bernaung di bawah Astro AWANI. Apa yang best sangat dengan Rancak TV ni? Of course best. Sebab dia ada macam-macam cerita. Dia ada cerita pasal isu-isu semasa, cerita pasal kesenian, cerita pasal hiburan, cerita pasal kecerdasan, cerita pasal sukan, cerita pasal travel, cerita pasal sejarah, fakta-fakta menarik. dan mereka juga ada buat short film dan juga dokumentari. Dan yang paling penting, Rancak TV tak ada cerita pasal politik.
Wah, menarik tu. Kena bayar ke nak tengok konten-konten Rancak?
Thanks for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Let's continue our look at the political instability of state assemblies with a focus on Melaka and Johor now. Joining us on the line, we have Professor Dr. Hamidin Hamid, political analyst from Universiti Malaya. Hamidin, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I'd like to begin with a look at Melaka first, if I may. The one-day Melaka State Assembly sitting yesterday descended into a shouting match after House Speaker Omar Jaafar rejected a motion for his removal. Now, Perikatan Nasional representatives in Melaka later reconvened without opposition assembly persons to elect its own speaker. We understand now that Harapan will be filing a legal challenge against the validity of the new House Speaker, Abdul Rauf Yusof. Now, your view, Hamidin, in terms of the legality in which all of this happened, what do you think?
I think it is some aspect of legality that will be interesting to look at. It's not only in Melaka, actually. What happened today in Perak also, I think, opened up a lot of good opinion that can be delivered regarding the legality of the removal of the speaker. In case of Melaka, I think because first, the House was not convened, that when he was, Rauf was elected, no opposition was in the House, and also doesn't really follow the order of the House. I think that is very much a strong point taken by the PH government in Melaka. But interestingly, I think in Melaka what happened yesterday, 2 days ago, is not only about that, but it's more on the behavior of some of the state assemblymen, which I think that caught the eyes and the ears of Malaysians in large.
Right.
Yeah, I know the Melaka Assembly has made Peppa the Pig a very popular figure in Malaysia now, I think, regardless of how much marketing money was poured into that one. I do want to ask you, what's at stake? We know in Johor it was the fight between UMNO and Bersatu was about GLC positions. Yeah. What is at stake in Melaka?
I think in Melaka too is about the same. I think, Shara, I think when we look at the change of the government, the alignment in the federal, but how does we affect that in the state level? This is where, and especially at the state level, we are talking about each constituency of political party. Each bahagian in each state will definitely have now realign what is their position. So everybody, I think, have their own stake and interest in everything in regard to the state matters, and not only about state matters. What happened in Johor, for example, highlighted the issues even in the district or even in the bahagian level. So this is where the real politics about Malaysian politics is all about, where we're talking about the grassroots level. So whatever happened in Kuala Lumpur, in Putrajaya, I think it's one level, but what happened in Melaka, for example, is not only between Bersatu and BN, but also with any other members that joined the newly PN government in Melaka.
Right, Hamidin, is it ever about higher order things like ideology or programs or governance style, commitment to democracy, or is it just about positions? Is that what the fight is always about?
I think it's not really it's about position. I think it's about survival, about how, for example, you're talking about the real politics, how can, for example, you're talking about the fight over resources among the parties. Positions mean resources at the same time. How they want to position themselves, how they want to position their party, and especially in regard to the next PRU. I think, yeah, definitely it's not about ideology, it's not about integrity, it's not about transparency or public policy. Hardly. Those things are hardly being debated, especially in Malaysian politics. But what we're talking about survival, not only them as an individual, but them as a party. I think this is where it becomes very interesting for the grassroots level, for each one, members in kampung, in bahagian, in town, surviving and looking at how are their party then, and their party will survive for the next couple of years.
Oh, that's very interesting. I do want to focus a little bit on something that happened in Johor. So His Royal Highness the Sultan of Johor said that he does not want any disruption when he officiates the State Legislative Assembly sitting on Thursday, following which Pakatan Harapan withdrew its expected no-confidence motion against the Menteri Besar Datuk Hasni Mohamad. Yeah. Now, talk to us a little bit about how this perhaps points to the role that the palace may play in state politics, not just in the Johor situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. I think in Malaysian politics, what we call it the 4R, race, religion, royalty, and regionalism. For me, these are the royalties play a big role, especially when it comes to the state assemblyman officiating the state assembly. And I think that's a good advice given by the Sultan of Johor. I think put the politics, especially during his officiating the state assembly. But however, I don't think that will settle the matter in regard to Johor, because there is a very slim majority held by PN government in Johor is only 2. So this is where, in my point of view, it will continue. Maybe it will kind of put a halt for a day or 2, but I think the debate, the horse trading about vote of no confidence, the stability of the government in Malacca and state will continue until the next PRU.
Right. So you point to the small majority that these state governments have that is fueling this instability. What about Selangor and Penang then as examples? Do we expect much more stability in these states?
Yeah, I think so. Looking at that, looking at Selangor and Penang, I think because of the huge majority held by PH, I think they will be very much stable there. If you look at most of the PN took over states, even in Perak, even in Kedah, to some extent, in my point of view, even though it just collapsed today, the majority held by the PN is very slim. So this is where, and if you look at the same time, we know that most of the parties are going to have their own election. Bersatu is going to have one, UMNO going to have one, PKR, I think by next year too, going to have one. So all this will give a lot more dynamic to the political situation in Malaysia.
What about the other future scenario with regard to Bersatu, the position of Dr. Mahathir versus Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, the battle there? Right. Do you think the fall of Kedah will have a negative impact on Dr. Mahathir's faction within Bersatu?
Oh, definitely. I think definitely. I think the position, Mokri, his position as MD definitely will bring in a lot of clout. Remember, sir, I think when we're talking about Malaysian politics, positions always carry a lot of meaning to Malaysian politics. It carries a lot of advantages to the incumbent. So by, I think, staying as a Ministry of Kedah, we give a lot of tremendous advantage for Mukris. So now the collapse of PH, I think, we give a big hiccup to Tun Mahathir in his challenge to Tan Sri Muhyiddin.
Okay, on that note, I just want to ask you then, how has everything that's happened in the past a few weeks, everything that's happened with Kedah, with Melaka, with Johor, how does that, what does that tell you about the strength of the current federal government?
Oh, I think it's very interesting to look. I think, if you ask me, it is quite I'm not saying stable. They have the majority, the way I see it, but I think the majority is very slim. And this is in any democracy in the world. If a ruling government have a very slim majority, it's going to be unstable government. I think that's what is happening. So that's why, in my point of view, Tan Sri Muhyiddin very much try to cement his place, his government, to become more stable. And I think, I do expect for the next month or 2, more effort will be made by him to make sure that PN become very stable, structurally, and also being accepted by all the parties involved.
But will he have to do that essentially by giving away more positions in GLCs, basically bending over to please those that he's trying to keep supporting him? Will he be a weak man as a consequence?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Looking at a situation, I don't think that will that indicate that Tan Sri Muhyiddin in the weak position as it is now. I don't think so, but I think it's become, as far as I know, is part of the larger deal in the coalitions, right, where whoever not being appointed in the administration will get something. But having said that, okay, I think the most important for PN is very much how can they establish PN as a structure, and how can they work together with PN or with PAS and build a good structure facing the next election. Yes. I think that is the challenge.
Hamidin, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. It is always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing your insights. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, with me Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for this evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night, folks.